أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد سيد المرسلين وخاتم النبيين وحجة رب العالمين، المنتجب في الميثاق المصطفى في الضلال المطهر من كل آفة البريء من كل عيب، المؤمل للنجاة المرتجى للشفاعة، المفوض إليه دين الله. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك وأناخت برحلك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين وعلى أخته العقيلة عقيلة الطالبين زينب الكبرى وأخيه أبا الفضل العباس ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سأل أبا ذر الغفاري رضوان الله تعالى عليه رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم عن عمر بن خطاب، فقال صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم: واكتموا إنه فرعون هذه الأمة، لا تخبروا بهذا من لم يحفظ العهد بعلي. Tonight the topic will be about one of the most controversial individuals in Islamic history that some of the Muslim world, they reveal this person, there is an utmost respect, and they know him as a companion of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, and he is also known as the second Khalifa from the Khulafa al-Rashideen, and he is also known to be the first to be called Amir al-Mu'mineen. And of course there are many of the virtues that half of the Muslim world they put up to this individual. The other Muslim world, the other hand, you find that there is not much of virtues for this individual, and there are many of the ahadith that condemn the actions of these so-called companion of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. And tonight we want to shed some light on who this person is. First thing first, his birth. If you look into the Siyar, the books of history, you find that he was born 583 CE in Mecca al-Mukarramah, 13 years after the Am of Fil. So he's younger than Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, 13 years. And he died in Medina al-Munawwara, 644 CE, and that is when he was at the age of 60, and some narrations say 61. At this time, this person passed away. He was killed at this age. Looking at his lineage and who this person was, of course, you find that the books of ahadith, the books of siyar, they mention that they say he's Umar ibn Khatab bin Nufail bin Abdul Uzza, and his father is Al-Khattab. His mother is Hantama bint Hashim, وكان يكنى بأبي حفص. And of course there are many narration of who this person was, and we come to that in a minute. We have a hadith, a very famous hadith, that goes into his lineage and who this person was. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, kharaja Rasulullah. This is a hadith from the Prophet that mention, in this hadith the Prophet mentions the lineage of some of the people, and here there is this highlighted part, the underlined part of who Umar was. Of course, in the books of the Mukhalifin, the books of the Bakris and the Umaris, Umar is known to be one of these, from the Quraysh, and of course, somehow, and of course, every one of them is, every enemy of the Prophet or Ahlul Bayt is somehow related to the Prophet, and they come back and they say, he meets the Prophet on the 4th or 5th of his grandfathers, and this is what he was. But when it comes to our books, there are, of course, different narrations. خرج رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم فنادى الصلاة جماعة فاجتمع الناس فقال ما بال أقوام يزعمون أن قرابتي لا تنتفع أو لا تنفع به لو قد قمت المقام المحمود لشفعت في علوجكم لا يسألني اليوم أحد من أبواه. Here the Prophet is talking about some of the people that said, any relation to the Prophet will not help you. There is no intercession that will come from that. There is no shafa'ah. So it doesn't mean that if you are related to the Prophet, you have chance to be in paradise. There is no intifa'. There is nothing coming from that. So the Prophet was very upset from this. And he said, one of you is saying that. Who was saying that? Umar ibn Khatab. He was bringing out this, and he was telling everyone, look, whether you are a cousin of the Prophet, whether you are his grandson, his family member, this doesn't help you to be, this doesn't help for you to have any special treatment. And here the Prophet ﷺ says, لا يسألني اليوم أحد من أبواه. That person that is saying this and is spreading this, it wouldn't be in his interest for me to tell who his parents are. So that person should be quiet. إلا أخبرته. So this was a threat from the Prophet. فقام إليه رجل فقال من أبي يا رسول الله. One of the people that he stood up and he said, يا رسول الله, who is my father? And this was one of the people, one of the companions. فقال أبوك غير الذي تدعى عليه. Your father is not. This is, of course, when I say companion, let me just stop right there for a minute, and for you to understand what companion is. For the other school of thought, whoever saw the Prophet, whoever sat down with the Prophet for 5, 6 minutes, 10 minutes, he's a companion. And he's given this, medal of honor, and he's a companion of Rasulullah. For us, it's not that. Companion is different, and I'll come to that in in somewhere in the middle of the lecture. فقال أبوك غير الذي تدعى عليه. So your father is not the one that you say he is. That's not your father. The one that you say is my father, that's not your father. Someone else is your father. أبوك فلان ابن فلان. Your father is فلان ابن فلان. فقام رجل آخر. Another person stood up and he said, فقال من أبي يا رسول الله? Who's my father? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, your father is the one that you say he's your father. And you say he's my father and he's my, I belong to this lineage and he's my father and I belong to this tribe. That's your father. فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم ما بال الذي يزعم أن قرابتي لا Rasulullah was saying that to Umar, for Umar to get up. But Umar was sitting there and he was afraid to get up to say, what about me? I'm the one who said that. Because Rasulullah here is talking about the lineage and the importance of someone who is related to the Prophet. And this is why he was spreading Umar ibn Khatab that this will not help you. Rasulullah was threatening this. He said, the one who is saying that, let him get up for me to tell everyone that he belongs to that father or he doesn't belong to that father. So Umar ibn Khattab was sitting down, and of course Umar ibn Khattab, of his characteristics is known to be, mashallah, very brave. So his bravery exceeds here, and he was silent. This is how brave he was. But Umar was sitting down and he didn't want to say anything. Umar, Rasulullah pointed out to him. Again, he mentioned that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, who is the one who's saying such a thing? فقال عمر فقام من مكانه وقال أعوذ بالله يا رسول الله من غضب الله وغضب رسوله أعف عني عفى الله عنك. I'm here asking repentance. Don't mention who's my father is. So don't go into that, because if you go into it, you see there is a whole mix-up. There is this who was with who came to who, and we have many narrations of who this person was. But he's known to be Umar ibn al-Khattab or Umar ibn al-Khattab. Not Khattab, but Khattab. So this is not the highlight of this lecture. The highlight of this lecture is this. If you look into his history and if you listen to many of the lectures of the other school of thought, find me some good merits of Umar ibn Khattab. Some virtues. Now, if I tell you of merits of Amir al-Mu'mineen, if I'm here until next month, not from our books, from their books, I can bring you the virtues of Amir al-Mu'mineen that you are proud of, that you mention it. You will go up on the mountain and you scream it out. But let's look into some of the merits of this person from their books. This is from their books. For example, when it comes to his submission to Islam, so we said his birth is 13 years after the Am of Fil. So he's 13 years younger than Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. And he was killed when he was 60 or 61 years of age. Now, when it comes to his Islam, for the school of thought, after Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, the Anbiya and Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, the first one that comes in line, and he's the best of all mankind after the Prophet, is who? Who? No, from the other school of thought. Abu Bakr, ahsantum. Abu Bakr is known to be the best of the best after the Prophet, because Abu Bakr was the first to submit to Islam. And if you look into the books, they say أول رجل, the first of the man from the adults. But from the Sabiyya is Amir al-Mu'minin Ali ibn Abi Talib. So they have to bring this up, Sabiyya, and then, and they say Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr is A'lamun Nas, Aqdha Nas. Well, we're not talking about Abu Bakr here, but we're talking about the one who came after Abu Bakr. But there is a love for Umar more than Abu Bakr. And they admit to it. They say, look, we love Umar more than we love Abu Bakr, and Abu Bakr is greater than Umar. The reason behind that is many things, and we mention them. First and first, about his Islam. He submitted to Islam after 45 of the males that submit to Islam. They submitted to Islam. So you have to keep these figures in your mind. 45 of the people, of the Arabs, they submitted to Islam from the male side, and 11 from the females. So 45 male, 11 from the female, and then Umar submitted to Islam. So this is when 6th year of the Ba'tha, after the Ba'tha. 6th year after the Ba'tha, and some narrations say 9th year after the Ba'tha. So he was in the first in line. So 6 or 9 years after the Ba'tha, 45 from the male side they have submitted, 11 of the female side have submitted. Now Umar, there's two versions, there's two stories of how he submitted to Islam. And if you look at both of them, and if you listen to both of them, and they talk about this as this is a virtue. I don't know what the virtue is. One is this, that he heard that his sister has submitted to Islam and her husband. So he came, and this is the Umar that we know. He came to the house to beat them. And he came to the house, he started beating them. And just imagine this, a brother comes into a house and he starts beating his sister and her husband. After that, he came down a bit and he saw there is a book there. Which book? Quran al-Kareem. What is that? Quran. Really? I want to touch it. This is the hadith they bring, and this is not from us. You might say this is in our books, this is from you. No, this is in their books. He was about to touch the Quran. His sister said, stop right there. You can't touch this book until you are tahir. How can I be tahir? You have to perform the ablution, the wudu. So he performed, this is before he became Muslim. He performed the wudu. Now I don't know how he knew the wudu, how to perform the wudu. Well, he performed it. He performed the wudu, and then he opened the Quran, and he came to Surah Taha. When he opened the Quran, he looked at Surah Taha, and he read Surah Taha. He said, take me to Muhammad, I want to become Muslim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Of course, this salawat is not that he became Muslim. This is because of the Rasulullah's name. And yes, this is the first version. And if you look into this, if you dissect this, where is the virtue, Habibi? He started beating his sister barbarically. They're bleeding. What you doing? Well, we are doing what? We're learning Quran. And then he's about to touch the Quran. If you look at it, where is the virtue? Okay, this is one version. The other version, he heard that his sister has submitted to Islam. He took his sword to go and kill the Prophet. To kill the Prophet. ليقتل رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. In this time, all of this happening, 45 of the males that became Muslim. First is Abu Bakr, and then the rest came, and I'm saying from their version of them. And the ladies submitted to Islam. Rasulullah, everyone that submits to Islam, Rasulullah says, no, this is not who I'm looking for. This is in their version. Rasulullah says, I have a special dua. I'm asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for a person to become Muslim, that person puts izzah in this Islam. Allahumma a'izz al-Islam, a'izz al-Islam bi-Islami Umar. This is the dua of the Prophet all this time. That if Umar becomes Muslim, Islam will become Aziz. And the Muslims are scared. The Muslims are scared all this time because it's the time of the Ba'tha. Rasulullah hasn't given them the green light to go out in the streets of Mecca and tell the people that we are Muslims. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is waiting for this person. He comes and he's holding a sword to kill the Prophet, to assassinate the Prophet. This is in their books. This is a second version of how he became Muslim. He came to kill the Prophet, and there is a virtue there. I don't know where the virtue is, but there is a virtue there. They say it's hidden somewhere. You have to find it. So when he came and he saw the Prophet reciting Surah Taha, again, Surah Taha. So if you look at it, Surah Taha, Quran. So this is way into Islam. This is so much. 45 of the male, 11 from the female. Quran has come down to Surah Taha. This is this much. And now it's Surah Taha, and this person hasn't become Muslim yet. He comes to assassinate the Prophet. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam recites Surah Taha, he falls in love with Surah Taha. And they say, fell into his heart the love of the Prophet and love of Islam. He sat down and said, I want to submit to Islam. Suddenly, okay, tfaddal, submit. He submitted to Islam. After he submitted to Islam, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, Alhamdulillah, my dua has been accepted. Allahumma azz al-Islam bi Umar. Umar now have brought Islam to Izz. So, and then Umar, here, as soon as he becomes Muslim, you see the Umar that we know, the brave Umar, the courageous Umar, the one that we know. He starts saying what? Ya Rasulullah, alasna ala al-haq. Suddenly, he just became Muslim a minute ago. Now, alasna ala al-haq ya Rasulullah. He said, yes. Then why don't we go out, tell the people, tell the public, we are Muslims. Let's go. Rasulullah said, see, all of you, 45 of you didn't say that from the male side. 11 from the female. Look, all of you are cowards. But look at Umar, and he became, and he said that. So this is some of his virtues. And now, if you look during the time of the Prophet and Umar, there is a lot of debates. There is a lot of negotiation with Rasulullah. There is a lot of harsh words with Rasulullah from him. And this is not in our books again, this is in their books. For example, كان عمر يرى الرأي فينزل به القرآن. So this is in their books. وأخرج البخاري وغيره عن أنس قال قال عمر وافقت ربي في ثلاث. This is very, very dangerous. Now, if you look at all other Sahaba, even Amir al-Mu'mineen, salamullah alayh, do we have any virtue that we say, because of Amir al-Mu'mineen, he said that, Allah agreed to it, and he sent down a verse, or he sent down a command? Now, here he says, وَافَقْتُ رَبِّي فِي ثَلَاث قُلْتُ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. And he's saying, I'm saying this, and Allah is revealing some verses in the Quran al-Kareem, agreeing to what I'm saying. Okay. This is in Bukhari? Yes. يا رسول الله لو اتخذنا من مقام إبراهيم مصلى. This is one of the ideas, bright ideas of this second one of Umar ibn Khatab. فنزلت واتخذوا من مقام إبراهيم مصلى. So he decides, and he says to the Prophet, I have this idea, and then the Prophet hears it. Of course, the angels are all hearing it, because in their narration, Umar is what? Let me talk about this. The characteristics of Umar, physical part of it, he was tall, as I mentioned. He was very tall. He was muscular, Umar. Well, he had a bit of belly, so he wasn't all six packs. No, he had a bit of belly. Yes. He was bald, very bald, they say. I don't know what that means, very bald, but he was bald. And he had thick mustache, very thick mustache. So whenever he used to get angry, he used to hold on to his mustache and blow some air out. So this is some of. And he had a Jawhari voice. Jawhari voice means very thick voice. And he was known to be very loud. And they talk about this. They say one of the virtues of Umar is this, that Rasulullah one day said to Abu Bakr, Ya Abu Bakr, why is it that you recite your salah in ikhfa? Very ikhfa, it means silently, shouting. So Abu Bakr said this is in virtue of Abu Bakr and Umar. So brace yourself. So he said, what? Ya Abu Bakr, why is it that you recite your salah in ikhfa? He said, Ya Rasulullah, so if I'm reciting my salah in ikhfa, I know Allah is hearing me. That's enough. So even if I'm whispering, Allah can hear me. That's enough for me. And he looked up to Umar. He said, Umar, what about you? Why are you so loud in your salah? Whenever you pray, you are so loud. Everyone can hear you in the house. So Umar said, Ya Rasulullah, I recite my salah so loudly, so the shayateen, they run away from the house. So Rasulullah here said to Abu Bakr, you a bit louder, you a bit lower. So he said to the one, you a bit louder, don't be so silent. And the other one, a bit lower. But you see the virtues here that Allah hears me. That's enough. And the other one, the shayateen are running away. And this is a fadila from them. So this was the first one. We said Maqam Ibrahim. What's the other one? This one is very, very dangerous. If you look at this one. وَقُلْتُ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ إِنَّ نِسَاءَكَ يَدْخُلَ عَلَيْهِنَّ الْبِرَّ وَالْفَاجِرَ فَلَوْ أَمَرْتُهُنَّ أَن يَتَحَجَّبْنَ. What does that mean? He's teaching Rasulullah about hijab. Not just Rasulullah, he's teaching the ummahat of the mu'mineen about hijab. That everyone comes into the house, Ya Rasulullah. Al-bir wal-fajr. They tell them to put some hijab on? What is this, Ya Rasulullah? First thing first, he's teaching the Prophet of God. A Prophet that Allah has sent to be Khatamul Anbiya, Khairul Bashar. Now, when it comes to the virtues of Amir al-Mu'mineen, do we have any virtues of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, alayhi afdalus salati was salam, when we downgrade the Prophet to bring Amir al-Mu'mineen up? Do we do that? Wallah, we don't do that. But here, he's teaching to the Prophet, he said, Ya Rasulullah, inna nisa'aka yadkhula alayhinna al-birra wal-fajir, falaw amartuhunna an yatahajjabn. So the Prophet doesn't know chastity, he doesn't know modesty, he doesn't know of hijab. And Ummahat al-Mu'mineen, they have no idea of this. The Ummahat of the Mu'mineen, they don't know they have to wear hijab. So Allah says, فَنَزَلَتِ الْآيَةِ الْحِجَاب. So the ayah of the hijab came down because of the second one saying, Ya Rasulullah, be careful with your wives. They're always out and about and everyone comes in and goes, this is not right. Of course. سَمْعًا وَطَاعَةً. What else? So this was the second one. واجتمع على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. So here says there's no آله, but صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم نساءه في الغيرة فقلت لهن عسى ربه أن طلقتكن. This ayah also came down أن يبدله أزواجا خيرا منكن فنزلت كذلك. So here he's teaching the Prophet of these. First hijab, the other one Maqam Ibrahim, the other downgrade the Prophet, bring him down to bring Umar up. And this is not just for Umar. This is for all of companions they respect. They bring down the Prophet and they bring up these companions. The Prophet did this wrong, did that wrong, did wrong. I don't know what this is from. But when it comes to the virtues of Amir al-Mu'mineen, we don't do any of that. So if you look at some of the ahadith about his virtues and how the Prophet ﷺ spoke about him. For example, this hadith, of course, this is not in our books. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم عمر مع الحق والحق مع عمر. Oh, sorry, no, this is Ali. 1 second. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم أنا مدينة العلم عمر. No, not that one. 1 second. I think I have it wrong here. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم علي مع القرآن. No, this is Ali, Umar. No, we talk about Umar. Here we go. Listen to this ones. إن الشيطان يخاف منك يا عمر. All right. I don't know. Look at this. إن الله جعل الحق على لسان عمر وقلبه. So the haqq is on his lisan and on his qalb. Okay. Yeah. There are many, mashallah. We go to others as well. One day Umar was sitting down, he smiled, and then moments later he cried. So you find these things happening with mental issue people, some people that have mental issues. So he smiled and then he started crying. So they said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. He's the first to be known as Amir al-Mu'mineen. If you look at his khilafah, just a side note, Abu Bakr, how long did Abu Bakr rule? 2 to 3 years. Not that much. And Abu Bakr, before his death, he nominated Umar. And of course, I brought up this hadith that I can't leave the ummah without a successor. So the Prophet didn't do that. The Prophet had no idea he had to do this. He wasn't working on on that day that this instruction was given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so he missed it out. He missed out that he has to put a successor. So Abu Bakr was on that day, he learned it, and he had to put Umar. And they come to that and they fix it up somehow. They say, look, he didn't nominate him for him to be a Khalifa. He didn't become Khalifa until people came and they pledged allegiance to him. But Abu Bakr, he put him forward. In a way, he was put forward. Umar ruled for how many years? 12 to 13 years. From 13 AH to 23 AH. Yes? They say 10 years, they say 13 years, up and down with the dates. They said 10 to 13 years. Anyway, that amount of years, there was a lot of achievements, hundreds of achievements. And we come to the achievement that he did. And Izz of Islam is from him. That's why we say Izz of Islam is from Umar. And what Umar did, he brought Islam to Izz. He dignified Islam. So, if you look into this story that is mentioned, even in the books, but I mentioned the story and it comes to, is it right? It's not right in their books, in our book. So he was smiling and then moments later he cried. His companions sitting next to him, they said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. First to be known as Amir al-Mu'mineen. Why is it you just smiled and then you start crying? He said, I remember the days in the pagan years, in the time of Jahiliyyah, that we made an idol from food, date and some flour and some olive oil. We made an idol, a statue, a god, if you may, and we put it forward for us to pray for it. It was time of drought. There was no much food. Very, very hot weather. There's no much of rain. Drought, that's how it is. There's no much of food. So we looked up and we saw we have an idol made of food. So we attacked the idol and we ate the idol. That made me smile. This was our time in Jahiliyyah, and that's what we did with our own God. What made you cry? I remember the day I took my daughter to the desert and I pushed her into the grave, and she reached up when I was trying to bury her alive. She reached up and she started wiping the sweat and the dirt from my face, but I kept doing what I was doing. I pushed her in and I buried her alive. Of course, when it comes to the other school of thought, they say this is ضعيف. And this is always on the tongue. ضعيف السند, ضعيف الهوية, ضعيف. Why? Because this narration was narrated by Jabir ibn Yazid al-Ju'fi. And if you look to Uthman al-Khamis, for example, Dr. Uthman al-Khamis, every imbecile, they gave him a PhD. One of them is this one, Uthman al-Khamis, and he's from Kuwait. Yes? Uthman al-Khamis, the so-called doctor, alim, when he talks about the seerah of Umar ibn Khatab, he brings this up and he says, no. Why? ضعيف, weak. Why? Because Jabir ibn Yazid al-Ju'fi is known to be a Shi'i. He's a Shia. He's a Shia. Jabir ibn Yazid al-Ju'fi. So for us to take a hadith from him, that's not right. And this hadith, أكل الصنم وقتل ابنته عمر ibn Khattab, coming from Jabir ibn Yazid al-Ju'fi, no. Throw it to the wall. But of course, when it comes to us, yes, this is possible. First and first, this was in the time of Jahiliyyah. And as I established before, I said that he was a latecomer. He didn't become Muslim. He wasn't one of the first of the Muslimin. He became way back, 6th or 9th year after the Ba'thah. 45 of the males have become Muslims, 11 of the females. This person comes and you heard of the two versions, and this is some of what they bring. And if you look throughout his time with the Prophet, there is always this harsh words from him, fighting or raising his voice to the Prophet. One of the virtues they mention, if you look into the books, they say that Rasulullah was sitting with a group of ladies, and they were talking with the Prophet. Rasulullah was giving them some ahkam, he was teaching them some virtues, he was teaching them some akhlaq. So they heard the door knocking. Who is it on the door? Umar. So they were all afraid. They ran away. This is in their books. This is one of the virtues. They ran away and they found a room and they hid in that room. So Umar came, he sat down, and he saw Rasulullah smiling, laughing. Ya Rasulullah, why is it you laughing? Well, I was sitting with the ladies and they were talking to me, and some of them, their voices were being raised in front of me. But as soon as they heard you coming and they saw you coming, they ran and they hid. And he became very upset here. I said, oh, they have no shame from you and they are afraid of me? One of the ladies from the back, and this is their virtue, not our virtue. We don't write this down and we mention it on the 9th of Rabi' al-Awwal. No. This is in their books. And they say this in their mosques and they mention this as a virtue. One of the ladies, she stood up and she said, oh Umar, you know why? Because you are harsh. Anta ghalidh. You're harsh. وَقَسِيُّ الْقَلْبِ, and your heart is very, very qasi. But the Prophet is different. Oh, this is a virtue? Subhanallah. If you look at his time with the Prophet, تخلف عن جيش أسامة. تخلف عن جيش أسامة. He didn't listen to the Prophet. Whenever there was a command of the Prophet, he was always there. And if you look in Sahih al-Bukhari, for example, one of the virtues I mentioned from him is this, that one of the virtues of Umar ibn Khatab is that he always wanted everything to be again repeated by the Prophet. That's why he used to argue with the Prophet. He used to debate the Prophet. That is why Rasulullah, in one of these occasions, in one of these events, he said that I wish there was a Nabi after me, and that would be you, Ya Umar. That if I die, there would be a Nabi after me. But I'm Khatamul Anbiya. I'm Khatamul Anbiya. But unfortunately, this is it. This is the case. If it wasn't, I wish it was you, for you to be the Nabi after me. So this comes to the hadith of the Prophet with Amir al-Mu'mineen. What did Amir al-Mu'mineen say after, when he came back and he said, Ya Rasulullah, you left me in Medina and you left, and these people that saying that you don't favor me, or this kind of things that, and Rasulullah said, Ya Ali, anta minni bimanzilati Haruna min Musa. Illa annahu la nabiyya ba'di. See, even the wording of the virtue of Amir al-Mu'mineen is right. Beautiful wording. But when it comes to the wording of the virtues of the so-called virtues of the others, you see there is no beginning, there is no end, there is no middle. It's just lie upon lie. A lie upon lie. And they start to fix it up. For example, when it came to the death of the Prophet, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, and this is again in their books, on the 11th year after Hijrah, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam was laying down sick. The Prophet said, "A'tuni bi kitabin aktubu lakum kitaban la tadhillu ba'dah." Yes, he said, bring me a pen and a paper for me to write. I want a will. And this wasiyah for it to stay, for you not to go astray. Now here, this is Tamma al-Kubra, as you say. Yeah? What he said is not right. What he said was, إن النبي قد غلب عليه الوجع وعندكم القرآن حسبنا كتاب الله. So, how can I make this right? What do I do to make this right? Well, there is many ways. One, and this is what they say. They said, look, he saw the Prophet sick. He didn't want to make the Prophet get up, sit down, and write down the wasiyah. He's going to get tired. You know, that's why he said, Hasbuna kitabullah. That's one of the things they mentioned to justify his saying here. The other one is what? The other one is this. The other one is this. He knew that the Prophet finished his message. So there's nothing else for the Prophet to mention. So it's enough. It's enough. You don't need to mention any other things. So he decides what's enough, what's not enough. And he says, Hasbuna kitabullah. So he's taking care of the Prophet. He's worried about the Prophet. And he's worried about the message. And the other one, the third one, and this third one is very, very, if you look at it and if you dissect it, it's very hard for them to justify the third one. Even the excuse is worse than the sin. They say, even if the Prophet wrote the letter, even if the Prophet wrote the wasiyah, let's assume the Prophet wrote the wasiyah. If the ummah, they go against the wasiyah, this is not good for the Prophet. So he stopped that for that not to happen. And you go, really? This is how you justify it? Hasbuna kitabullah. And Hasbuna kitabullah, I mentioned this a while back, is from the second one. The second one wanted Hasbuna kitabullah more than the first one. Even the Khilafah in the era of the Abu Bakr, the so-called As-Siddiq, many of his decisions were made by Umar. For example, when he came to the Kitabullah, he said, Hasbuna Kitabullah. And whenever I recite this, and I recited that in Sahih al-Bukhari just a couple of days ago, and I was amused that this book, Sahih al-Bukhari, how did it come to us today? Because he ordered the people to bring the ahadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Every one of them, they brought a hadith. And in those days, we didn't have them on the iPad or on the iPhone or on the Samsung or anything like that. There were pieces of paper, pieces of leather, clay tablets. So they brought all of that. They thought, okay, you know what he's going to do? He's going to compile them. He's going to make a whole series of them. He's a Khalifa of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. For Abu Bakr, because Abu Bakr is known as Khalifat Rasulullah. The other one is not known as Khalifat Rasulullah. He's more known as Amir al-Mu'mineen, not Khalifat Rasulullah. The first one, the reason behind that, and even that they bring up, and they say the reason behind that, because it's with wording, it doesn't sound right. So Sam'an, it doesn't sound right. And listen to that excuse. Because you're going to say Khalifat Rasulullah. So because he's a Khalifa, the second one, of the Khalifa of the first one, that is Abu Bakr, and that is from Rasulullah. So you have to say Khalifat Rasulullah. So better to bring up Amir al-Mu'mineen. All right. So some of his legacies, if you look at it, one of them is that Hasbuna Kitabullah is one of his legacies. Burned down, so they brought all those books, they brought all of those ahadith, and they burned them down. And then again, in his era, he said, whoever mentions a hadith from the Prophet, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, that's from me, they will be imprisoned, they will be fined. This is from the second one. And your masa'ib today is from the second one, more than that is from the first or the third one. One of it is that. One of his legacies is Hasbuna, Kitabullah. The other of his legacies is that he brought down Bani Umayyah and he gave them power. He started from the second one. He gave Yazid, the brother of Muawiyah, the governorship of Damascus. Yazid is older than Muawiyah. And the Umayyads, they came into power in the era of the second one. And of course, they became more powerful in the time of the third one, Uthman. So that's the second one. Third, his ilm, his knowledge is questionable. In the best form, if you look at it, there is a lot of questions. For example, in one occasion, he comes to the mosque and he says, why is it your wives, they have such a high dowry? Lower the dowries. If I hear anyone, their dowry is above 400 dinar, I will take that dowry from them. I will punish them, take that dowry from them. One of the ladies stood up in the mosque and she said, oh, Amir al-Mu'mineen. And I do apologize for saying that. Amir al-Mu'mineen is only Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib. But this is what they mentioned him. That's how they called him. Oh, Fulan, ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hasn't given a limit for the dowry. How could you do that? In which he replies to her and he says, you're right. And then after that, he says, what does he say? He said that even a woman in her household her knowledge is above the knowledge of Umar. She came, that's what he says. She came, she debated, and she won. This is the ilm of Umar. Another legacy of Umar is change of ahkam. Change of ahkam. متعتان كان حلالا في زمان رسول الله فحرمه عمر. The first one was what? متعة الحج ومتعة التمتع. The tamattu, of course, the other one is zawaj. Hajj and zawaj. So how could this be? They say, well, again, how can I justify his action? I have to bring down the Prophet, downgrade the Prophet, for me to bring up the Sahabi, the companion of the Prophet, that I reveal and I say is khairul bashar. How? They say the Prophet, he made it halal, and then later on he made it haram. Now you, audience here, tell me in where, if you look into our history, where, in which occasion the Prophet made something halal and then later on he made it haram. Or vice versa. He said, here halal haram. Halal Muhammad halal ila yawm al-qiyamah wa haramuhu haram ila yawm al-qiyamah. Another one, hayya ala khayr al-amal. He took that off from the adhan and he added as-salatu khayrun min an-nawm. This is another one. Al-takattuf. Al-takattuf, this wasn't even in the time of Abu Bakr, this one, because the camera is not looking at right. Yeah, because some of them they put it here, some of them here, some of them have some tummy ache, they go all the way down and they hold it tight. So this takattuf came in the time of who? Umar. It didn't come in the time of Abu Bakr. It wasn't in the time of Abu Bakr. So the izz that the Prophet is here talking about, the izz of Umar that he brings to Islam, I don't know what the izz is. Even the wars, the conquest of Islam, of other nations, even that is not in strong narrations. No, they're not. They're not in strong narration. In many occasions, even Amir al-Mu'mineen comes into some of his ruling and Amir al-Mu'mineen stops him. That's why he said, لَوْلَا عَلِي لَهَلَكَ Umar. If it wasn't for Ali, Umar will die, Umar will vanish. In more than, the hadith says, in more than one occasion he said that. Because Amir al-Mu'mineen stopped it. It's not that Amir al-Mu'mineen is saving him. Amir al-Mu'mineen is saving the other person. For example, a woman comes, she had given birth when she was in her 6 months. And he said, you know what? Kill her because she has committed adultery. Amir al-Mu'mineen comes and he stops it, and Amir al-Mu'mineen gives him the hukum, and he tells him, this is not right for you to kill a woman like that. Because his ilm is not there. There's no ilm. Where is the ilm? And yet this person is being compared with Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi afdalus salatu wassalam. And they have the audacity of comparing him, this buffoon, this imbecile, with Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib salamullah alayhi. Now when it comes to his death, and I conclude with that one. If you look at the story of his death, and his death is by the hand of who? Firuz al-Nahawandi. Firuz al-Nahawandi, aka Abu Lu'lu'ah. If you look at the story of his death, and of course, when they made the series of Umar ibn Khatab, they tried to give it some oomph, as we say, and make the assassination of Umar ibn Khattab like the assassination of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. That he was in his prayer, and this person came and he stabbed him on his back, and they tried to do that to justify it, to make it a bit nicer, presentable, and of course they can't do that. If you look at his death, first thing first, they always mention this. They say Abu Lu'lu'ah al-Majusi. Majusi means what? Majusi means he's from Iran, first thing first. And he's not a Muslim, he's a Majusi. If you look at the time of Umar ibn Khattab, first thing first, Umar ibn Khattab was known to be racist. Umar ibn Khattab favored the Arabs on all other nations, and he was known for that. He favored the Arabs on all other nations. He was known for that. That's one. The other one, Umar had ruled out that no people that are on another religion, they have right to come into Medina. If you are a Christian, if you are a Jew, if you are whatever you are, you have no right to enter Medina unless you are a Muslim. All right. So how does this person enter, Abu Lu'lu'a enter Medina? That's one question, and we answer that in a minute. So that's one. The other one, this one, and the other one. In their narration, it mentions that Abu Lu'lu'a was praying behind him on the first line. When he went to ruku', he attacked and he stabbed him on the back. A Majusi prays salat. I don't know what version of Majusi that was in that time, but I don't think a Majusi prays salat. So how could this be possible? That he was in the first line, he comes and he stabs him while he's praying. All right. Well, the first one, Abu Lu'lu'a, Fayruz al-Nahawandi, was a servant of Al-Mughira bin Shu'bah. Al-Mughira bin Shu'bah, he requested, in their books, it says that he asked Umar to give him a safe passage and give him a green light for him, and that is Abu Lu'lu'a, to enter Medina. Why? It says that he had skill. He was a goldsmith. He was a very skilled goldsmith. And that request was granted by Umar. Umar said, okay, no problem. Let him come into Medina, and he came. The reason behind him killing Umar, in our versions, in some of our versions, is this, that he killed Umar for what reason? Because he wanted to take revenge, as some mention, for Lady Fatima al-Zahra, salamullah alayha. And that's why they call it Farhat al-Zahra. Some mention that. Others, they mention that he had an issue with Umar. He came to Umar and he said to Umar that all my day work, Mughira bin Shu'bah pays me only 2 dirham, and that's not enough. So he said to him, Umar, he said to him, go away, you from Fars, you Fulan, Ajmi. Even that is more than what you deserve. Again he came and he said, oh Umar, I'm working very hard. He's paying me only that much. So he took the hatred after Umar again kicked him out of the mosque, and he said, no, you have no right above this amount. So he took this hatred and he said, you know what, I will assassinate him, kill him. So the killing was that he asked Abu Lu'lu'a, Fayruz al-Nahawandi, oh Abu Lu'lu'a, make for me a dagger. A dagger. And he said, well, I will make a dagger for you. The history will talk about that dagger. So here Umar said, after Abu Lu'lu'a left the mosque, and I don't know, he's a Majusi, how could he come into the mosque? Even if you look at it in their stories, how does he come into the mosque if he's a Majusi? He comes into the mosque, he prays behind Umar. So is he Majusi? Is he a Muslim? What is he? When I talk about this, is in their books, of course. Because as I mentioned, when there is a lie, there is no top, there is no bottom, there is no head, there is no tail. You want to run, take it up and down. He's a Majusi who prays in the mosque, who's in the first line always thinking of the thawab. And here he comes to him and he says to him, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. Well, yet he's a Majusi. When he left, he said, Al-Kalb, the dog, had threatened me. The dog means the Abu Lu'lu'a. Haddadani, the dog. All right. He goes and he makes the dagger. And in their narration is that he was praying and he stabbed him on the back. They say 3 times. Well, he fell to the ground and he again called out, Al-Kalb qatalani. The Kalb killed me. So even see the lafaz, he was known to have this harsh and this foul mouth. He didn't have this beautiful, saying no. No, he had this Kalb and Fulan and Fulan. You know, the ladies run away from him, and the Prophet says, even Shaitan is afraid of you. In another narration, it says, if Shaitan sees you walking on that road, he goes on the other road. And this is a virtue. They say this is a virtue because Shaitan is afraid of him. No, it's not that. If you dissect the hadith, Shaitan says, you know what, I take this road and you take that road. So let's divide the work. Yeah. صلى على محمد وآل محمد. So in our narration, he stabbed him on his stomach, and for them it doesn't look nice, on TV, the stomach, everything is coming out. It doesn't look nice. He has to be in the back. Well, he stabbed him on his stomach, and everything came out. The masari and all that came out. Anyway, there is one of the ulama, their ulama, and he's a favorite of mine because he's when it comes to the khatab, he's very, mashallah, fluent, and he has a lot of, he's good in eloquency, but when it comes to the fada'il of this and that, you sit down and you wonder, where is this fada'il coming from? And he's known as Uraifi. I don't know if you know him. He's a Saudi sheikh. And he talks about this, and he starts to recite this as a musibah for the people to sit down and cry. And if you look in the crowd of the people in the mosque, everyone's just looking at him like, well, just finish up, we want to go have some dinner. So here he did that, and in their hadith it says after he fled and he said that Fulan, the kalb qatalani, he ran away. He was taken to his house and he fainted. When he came about, he said to his son, Abdullah bin Umar, he said to his son, did the people pray? Tell them not to miss the prayer for me. So the people, alhamdulillah, prayed. They didn't miss the prayer on that day. So they prayed the prayer, and then later on they came to him. They said to him, look, listen, you are in your last minutes. What do you want? What do you like? Some food, some drinks? He said, yes, of course, bring me some nabidh. And he drank the nabidh. And after his death, his son, Ubaidullah bin Umar, he attacked. Well, he fled. Who fled? Abu Lu'lu'. He fled, and he went all the way to Kashan, and he's buried right now there in Kashan. Radwanullah ta'ala alayh. For whatever reason it was that he killed Umar, Radwanullah ta'ala alayh. Wajazahu Allah insha'Allah. And we have nothing against anyone. We're just saying that because, as they mentioned, they say Ibn Muljam, listen, one dharba bi dharba. You say Ibn Muljam is in heaven because he wanted the rada of Allah for killing Ali. Well, I say the same thing, and don't get upset. Don't be like a little child going upset and say, I don't want to talk to you. Well, don't talk. If you want to do that, same thing for him, Abu Lu'lu'. Same thing. He wanted the rida of Allah. That's why he killed Umar. Well, Jazahullah khair al-jaza. So his son Ubaidullah bin Umar, he killed Al-Hurmuzan, another Ajmi, who was also a Muslim, because of a hunch he had. And he also killed the daughter of Abu Lu'lu'ah. That was Lu'lu'ah. She was a little child. They said this is before she hit puberty. He killed this innocent child, Ubaidullah bin Umar, and he was from his father. He learned from his father. He had this mentality of his father. Like son, like father. Like father, like son. Subhanallah. He killed the two. Amir al-Mu'mineen, when Uthman came into power, he asked for Uthman to pass judgment and said, you have to kill him. Who? Ubaidullah bin Umar. But Uthman said this. And Uthman, inshallah, we have a night about Uthman. Uthman said, I can't. Yesterday, his father died, and today I killed the son. This is not right. So Amir al-Mu'min, Ali ibn Abi Talib, he saw Ubaidullah and he said, if I get a hand of you, if I get you, I will place the judgment and you will be killed for what you have done. You killed two innocent people, Hormuzan, and you killed the little child. For what reason? Now let's say Hormuzan, he has something to do with the killing of your father. Why did you kill a little child? You killed a little child for what? وامتنع عثمان القصاص منه وقال كيف أحكم عليه وبالأمس قتل أبوه. Let him go. That's why when Uthman died, when Uthman was surrounded by 6,000 Muslims and they killed him, they assassinated him, when Amir al-Mu'minin came into power, he fled. Who? Ubaidullah bin Umar. He ran away. He went to who? To Muawiyah. One of the legacies of, as I mentioned, of Umar ibn Khatab is to bring into power the Umayyads, Muawiyah, Yazid, the Umayyads. They're well known as, and a person has to really look into the history books. In his books, in his stories. Look into their books. Look into the books of the Sunnis. Because there is no virtue. You don't find any virtue. You find someone who was harsh, who was loud, who had many issues with the Prophet, questioned the Prophet many times, very late to Islam, hot-tempered for no reason. And as I mentioned, the cleanest sword in Islamic history. The cleanest sword. He didn't fight any fights. He didn't do anything. Yet he's known to be brave. He's known to be courageous. Look into your history books. And then look into the فضائل of أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب سلام الله عليه. علي مع الحق والحق معه علي. علي مع القرآن والقرآن معه علي. أعدلكم علي. أقضاكم علي. أنا مدينة العلم وعلي بابها. فمن أراد المدينة والحكمة فليأتها من بابها. Not that day you bring it and say, he looked up and he saw the two coming in, Abu Bakr and Umar, and he said, look. Rasulullah said, look, these two are Sayyida Kuhud Ahl al-Jannah. Well, in Jannah we have elders, the teeth are falling off, and we have disabled people. What is that? This is not Jannah. No, it's a Jannah. This is aged care and DIS providers. That's not Jannah. In all, you have to be fair. Is this Jannah? Is this paradise? You have elders, elderly people, you have disabled people, you have people with issues. No. Sayyida Shabab Ahl al-Jannah. Even with a fada'il, at least bring a fadila that it makes sense. It doesn't make any sense. And if I go into the fada'il they bring up, subhanallah, none of them make sense because there is nothing there anyway. It's all empty. And as I mentioned, he's what? The hadith of Abu Dharr al-Ghifari. He said, سأل أبا ذر رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم عن عمر ابن الخطاب فقال صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم واكتموا إنه فرعون هذه الأمة. فرعون هذه الأمة. لا تخبروا بهذا من لم يحفظ العهد بعلي. Don't tell this to her because not many people have the capacity of understanding this, because this is going to be understood by many. He's Fir'aun of the Hadhi Ummah. And what is his legacy? Is nothing. Expansion, going out to other, conquesting other lands, so what? And even in the books I say, and I conclude with that, he wanted to join the armies to go for conquest, for fighting this army and that army, the infidels. Ali said to him, don't go, you are Khalifa of Muslimin, you are Amir al-Mu'mineen. Why do you want to go? We will go and we will open up. نفتح لك الفتح اليسير إنا فتحنا لك فتحا مبينا, and we come back to you and we give it to you in a gold platter. Don't fight any of these wars. Even those wars that he's giving credit for, he didn't even raise his sword. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. اللهم كل وليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وآله في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا. يا رب الحسين بحق الحسين اشفي صدر الحسين بظهور الحجة. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك وأناخت برحلك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين وعلى أخته العقيلة عقيلة الطالبيين زينب الكبرى وأخيه أبا الفضل العباس ورحمة الله وبركاته. الفاتحة قبلها الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.